marketing is a combination of different disciplines, and you'll see this during the course. It's a combination of economics, psychology, certainly in consumer behavior, sociology to a certain extent, finance, most definitely with the analysis, and a lot of other subsidiary streams as well. So we sometimes say marketing is a synthetic discipline. It's sort of man-made, but it does bring a lot of these different disciplines together. So what is new in marketing often is what's new in other subjects. So just this weekend, I was in Croatia, on Bol, actually, an island outside Croatia, with a number of people, and we were talking about some of the challenges of Europe. So I was with, happened to be the president of Croatia, actually, but the group I was in had 3 Harvard economists in it, and 2 of whom were Nobel laureates from. So Oliver Hart from 2016 and Ed from 2007, I think it was. So we were talking about the challenges of Europe, and obviously the challenges of marketing are related very much to the challenges of Europe. So quickly we talk about things like Brexit, and then we talk about challenges of trade wars and looking at the US and China and how Europe is a victim of this. But what does this come down to? This comes down to one simple thing. When we teach marketing and marketing environment, first thing we talk about is the macro environment or the general environment. You might not have heard of it referred to as that, but if I say the PEST factors, that's something you've probably come across. So the political, economic, social, technological. Now, these are things we teach Marketing 101 to our first year undergraduate students, and we might give it an hour max. And it's the first tutorial exercise they do, and then we rapidly move on because we have to know about the macro environment. The question now is that the issues that are going on in the macro environment are so significant, they're affecting all industries, and they're now becoming highly unpredictable. So whereas before the macro environment is usually fairly stable and very few things changed, political parties change, interest rates change, but fundamentally things are pretty stable. Now we're finding very much that's where the dramatic changes are taking place. Now, the rule of environmental responses is that what happens in the general environment affects the industry environment, the competitive environment, and the firm. So if there's significant changes in the macro environment, that ripple effect is proving to be really quite significant. So I'd say that's really one of the first issues in marketing, is that this remote environment, the changes are dramatic and really quite unpredictable. And more specifically within marketing, you'll come across things like account-based marketing, affiliate marketing, content marketing, cause-related marketing, experiential. I'm reading this off a list. There are sort of 40 different sort of in themes at the moment, influencers as well in marketing. Now, we'll be touching on aspects of all of these, and it's particularly important. But one of the things I want to talk to you today is really around four main themes, and I'll do this just briefly. So I think what's new and challenging in marketing, first of all, is the challenging interactions. We're finding industries are consolidating, and they're consolidating for a bunch of reasons. The car industry. So just at the end of last week, we heard Fiat Chrysler is looking to make a merger with Renault in France. What's that about? That's about scale. It's about a leadership crisis, as we know recently as well. But it's about scale and development of electric and hybrid vehicles, the future. The market has been extremely slow to respond. Consumer behavior now is changing rapidly in this direction across Europe. And the market propositions that are available aren't actually that good. It's still a very, very embryonic market. So Fiat Chrysler and Renault are looking to move on that. So those are some examples of consolidation. Also, the airline industry, we're seeing with pollution and carbon emissions and the footprints of passengers, including myself in this, need to be addressed. And as a result of that, there are many ways this can be improved. And consolidation, I think, is the first stage of this. So that's really the challenging interactions. The next element here I'd like to talk about is really complex insights, big data. Now, I used to be a statistician, but now I'm a data scientist. Well, so people are calling themselves. So it's a very fashionable kind of sexy subject. And when we talk about digital marketing transformation, as though it's something that's about to happen, well, it really has happened, and it's here and with us now. The question is, are we dealing with it? So we'll be looking at the nature of digital in the program and looking at the particular challenges this presents to our business and how it affects the customer experience, the operational efficiency, the business processes, but also the profitability of the business. through our business analytics. So we'll be using some techniques of looking at big data, but also in the 2 days prior to the course as well, you'll be studying digital as well with one of my colleagues. So you'll be primed on some of those ideas then. But we'll look at them particularly in relation to the go-to-market strategies. So things like design elements on websites and mobile, and also how this affects the overall customer experience with omni-channel marketing as well. The next point is constant evolution. So what's changing in markets? Not so much product innovation anymore, but one thing that's certainly changing is new category creation. So we're finding advantage isn't being created necessarily by incremental marginal gains on developing a product, but by certain product categories being absolutely destroyed and new categories being created with a new product. Completely transformational. And that's where the big value in innovation is these days, and that's where the big value we see in many of the large North American companies with big stock market increases. It comes down to not just product innovation, but new category creation. So we look at that. We'll also look at the nature of distribution. This is something that's proving to be quite rapid. So Silicon Valley is now suggesting that it's not all about evolution and innovation. It's about having a great idea, but if you can't scale it quickly, it'll die. So we look at a concept called blitz scaling, which is about this nature of distribution, about size and scope in attacking and developing a market. Also, the last point I want to talk about really is critical reflection, and we'll do this at the end of the course. But I was with a group last week, and we were talking about disruption, and all markets are being disrupted now. But it's become almost like a normal thing to say. If something is disrupted, that means its former norms, rules, and routines are destroyed in favor of a new model entirely. So it's dramatic. And we were talking about business schools, and this is an example of an environment that is ripe for disruption. So there are 25,000 business schools globally, and yet in many cases, we still feel the professor needs to be in the room with the student. And for a whole bunch of reasons, it makes a lot of sense. But this, along with a whole bunch of other markets, are being disrupted. But the issue we'll be looking at is they already have been. It's just the implications of them haven't been seen or witnessed yet. So it's not a question of reacting to change once we see it. It's a question of trying to be proactive and preempt much of this change. So we'll be looking at some of those elements towards the end of the course. So this is meant to be a taster, and I want to introduce you more to marketing really on day one. But what I'll be doing throughout the course is looking for interaction. So I find when I teach, I'm really facilitating the class as well as directing the class and delivering. So come on day one, read the cases, be prepared, be excited, and engage. Right, I'd like to now take you through to the course outline, the syllabus. And what I've done here is I'm just sharing the screen so you can see this. So you've already received this online in your learning platform. So here's some introductory material for you and explaining what the course will involve. The readings will be available for you just before the course begins. And also those 3 case studies, I would recommend you read those beforehand. Just read them once to familiarize yourself with the cases, and then there'll be time within the 3 days for study groups to work together on particular questions that are also in the syllabus as well. So it's just really to familiarize yourself with the case, and then in breakout groups, we'll assign you can discuss those questions and then disagree, debate, argue, and then we'll bring that back to class for the debrief. So the 3 cases you'll be reading will be Monocle, then Chef Oldani and Restaurant Dough in Milan, and Tough Mudder. So very briefly, the Monocle case is one I find truly fascinating. I teach this. I taught this in Asia, Russia, again Copenhagen, Austria a few weekends ago, and the US. And Monocle is basically a magazine. So the question here is, why would anyone ever want to enter a mature market such as magazine publishing with a high-end magazine? It makes completely no sense in the current market. The life cycle has reached maturity, margins are very low, it's a perfectly non-digital world, and Monocle doesn't have a digital environment. It's purely print. But we look at what the value proposition is of that case and find it very, very distinctive. There's a lot of also learning points from Monocle that we can use in other markets. So I find that a very kind of fertile case with some very, very rich and good ideas. Second case, Chef Oldani. Davide Oldani is a Michelin star chef. He's Italian. And he developed his first restaurant, Restaurant Dough, having worked in many of the leading Michelin 2- and 3-star restaurants throughout the world. But in developing Restaurant Dough, he found he was looking to develop what he called pop cuisine. That's his concept, which is basically very good quality food for good people. And so his idea here was very much cost-effective service excellence. So this is something I use in a lot of my teaching and also consulting environments, and something I'm using in the for projects we have currently in the National Health Service in the UK. How do we deliver cost-effective service excellence? So we often think this is, you might know the word, an oxymoron. It's fundamentally a paradox. How can we deliver high-quality Michelin star food, but at reasonable prices? Enter the case of Chef Oldani and how he does this. So he's very much a chef, but he's also an engineer. And it's interesting how we look at the case of operations in that case and how it interfaces with marketing decision-making to create a fantastic customer experience at very reasonable prices. More is the point, he does make a lot of money and there's a lot of throughput in that restaurant. Many Michelin star restaurants are really laboratories as opposed to great kitchens, whereas this environment is sort of normalizes and corrects for that. And the last case is Tough Mudder, which I understand there are some various Me Too brands that have entered the Lithuanian market with a very similar concept. So Tough Mudder is the concept of a former Harvard MBA student. And in developing this case, we look at brand, we look at developing new ventures, scaling, but also in particular how you protect a strong brand from imitators and Me Too, because the barriers to entry in this particular market are very low. So those are the 3 cases. So please read them before we meet and familiarize yourself with just generally the story in there, not so much the deep debates, but what's going on in the case. And we'll have time then to go through. Now just go through the pack in some more detail. I want to get really to the chronology of what we're going to do on days 1, 2, and 3. But just before that, grading. It's always the one of the most important parts of the course for you, I think. And there are 2 parts of it. One is some grading, which we're going to be doing within the 3 days. And the afternoon of day 3 will be, or you'll be rather, presenting in your groups a marketing success story. So you'll have analyzed during the process of the 3 days a case, a product, a brand, an organization, a corporation. Students in the past with me have even looked at celebrities. I think a group once even looked at the Roman Catholic Church and the British Army. So the level of analysis is, it doesn't really matter to me. The point is that you identify something that you believe is a marketing success, demonstrate that, having defined it, and then explain to me what the drivers of that success has been. So every case is unique always. So it's a piece of research, a piece of critical analysis, but understanding one particular core business and understanding the drivers of that. So we're also doing some teaching and some background on models and tools that can be used to gauge a marketing success dashboard on days 1 and part of day 2. Also, 70% is an exam. Now, that's not for you to worry about at the moment. It's going to be an applied piece of work. So something you will take from the course. You'll be focusing on one particular concept of your own choice that you believe is relevant to you. And then you'll be demonstrating on the basis of a series of questions how that is applied to your organization. And in so doing, that's a project in itself. So for the benefit of the business, for the benefit of your learning and showing me that you've learned and you've deeply comprehended many of the concepts in the taught part of the course. And there's some blah blah there about me and what I've done. And here we go now into day 1, 2, and 3. So in the morning of day 1, we're going to introduce you to marketing. I'm going to get to know you, and you maybe get to know me. But we're going to have some fun at this point, doing there's one particular exercise we'll be doing, which is always a good fun exercise. I won't say any more for now. But I'll be trying to work with you and to try and understand your knowledge of marketing, what your expectations are of the course. Then we go into some study time there for Monocle. Then we debrief what the Monocle case has been about up to lunch. And then we put you into study groups to work on the success story during the next 3 days. Then we have some lunch, and then I introduce the concept of digital marketing transformation, something that probably is affecting all your businesses to a greater or lesser extent. But the key question is, what are you doing about it? This is something I'm surprised by often, what the limited digital marketing capability is inside of companies when we think this is something now that's kind of 12 years old. So when the iPhone was launched and when Barack Obama was taking presidential office, that's when the digital world changed immediately. But we're now 12 years on, and it's quite a mature technology, even though it's transforming business. The question is, what are you doing about it in your business? And if you're not doing enough, how can you do more? And I tend to find this is a teaching theme that sort of splits the room. Many firms are either way down the curve, or others are at the very early stages. So we're going to go through this into slow detail to see what can be done and how you can develop this, not so much the digital marketing activities, but develop your digital marketing capability. So what is important to you, and then how are you going to leverage that to deliver value for the business? Then in the afternoon, I do a little bit of teaching here on what marketing success is, and I explain some shortcuts about how to go about this project for you. Some do's and some don'ts as well. So this is the marketing success story bit from 2:15 to 3 p.m. Then a short break, and then this is your study time. So this is when you'll be working in groups on the tables. I'll be walking the room, helping you start to specify a particular case, and then you'll be doing individual research, coming together, kind of co-creating your project on the success story. You'll have also some more time in day 2 for that. So we'll break officially at 4:30, but you might want to continue as well on day 2. So here we're looking at segmentation and targeting. This is marketing 101. They're very much the basics of marketing. You look at the market, you segment, you select a target market or target markets. You want to then position, and using your positioning strategy, you develop the 4 Ps of product, price, place, and promotion you're familiar with. But we're going to go one step further, because nowadays in the digital world, we're all segments of one. And the idea of having large segments where there's common behaviors within the segment and common characteristics, still applicable, and we still teach it. But at your level, I think we need to go one step further with this. So I'll be doing some statistical analyses to explain to you how we can use cluster, discriminant, and also factor analysis in Excel. Simple tool, provided you've got the data, we can analyze it. But it provides some very strong, very deep insights into the nature of your existing customer base with your existing customers. Potentially, this is something you might want to focus on as well for the exam. I find it a very useful technique. If some of you don't like statistics, don't have a fear factor on this. I'll be doing the teaching up front and showing you how it's done. It's more how the research can be used as opposed to how to crunch the numbers. Then we're going into the Davide Aldani case. I've just seen a typo there, Aldani, and some questions on that Michelin star restaurant. Then we've got a great panel we've set up. So we've got some briefing questions for the panel of 4 distinguished guests. And I'm going to be posing some questions to them, and then we're going to be synthesizing some answers from them and creating something of a debate in the room as to how they see the future of marketing in different areas, how they overcome particular challenges of marketing, and a number of other issues. Then we break for lunch. Then we look at customer value. Again, this is the debrief of the Aldani case, but this is where I'll be doing a little bit more numbers again, showing you how to calculate aspects of value. So when we talk about value, we sometimes talk about psychological value, economic value, customer value. All have different perspectives on the products and services you market. And what we're doing there is putting some numbers to some of those and explaining how to dissect them. So in certain markets, economic value is particularly important in the form of perhaps price. That would be the case in elastic markets. other markets differently. So we examine the sort of combination of factors that come together to try and understand better customer value, which again would be working with you and your examples in class of what works well in your company and what learnings you can apply to your business. Then a break and some more study time for your presentation on day 3 there in the afternoon. So now we open the final day. We're going to introduce something I'm particularly interested in and have been for some time, neuromarketing. So much of the time we talk about customers' expressed needs, and oftentimes the customer doesn't even realize what they want. That's probably something you've even said at some point. So we're very much aware of this, and as customers, like human beings, we're subject to bias, to as rational as we think we are, we're not, and we need to be aware of this. But what we tend to find here in neuromarketing is that whereas customers aren't necessarily rational, they are consistently non-rational. So in other words, they're rational, not rational, but in predictable ways. Now, from a marketing perspective and a consumer science perspective, that's very useful and very, very powerful. So we'll be using techniques within neuromarketing to understand what some of the latent needs are that customers have. That again, they're latent, so they're suppressed. They're not expressed. So they're not necessarily even aware of them themselves. So how can we as marketers elicit, how can we surface what those needs are so that we can understand to develop product and services that meet those future needs? So those are some techniques and tools around neuromarketing. Then we go into the group preparation on the Tough Mudder case, which is like a physical challenge, an obstacle course that people go through. Instead of doing a marathon, you might do a Tough Mudder run. It's seen as being very physically challenging. But Will Dean is the ex-Harvard MBA who developed this business. And it's a very neat business with a lot of key challenges. And interesting statistic for you at this point, many Harvard MBAs, in fact, 85% of Harvard MBAs at the moment, within 5 years are running their own venture. So whereas before the MBA traditionally used to be a main route into a multinational company, a consulting firm, developing a larger business and going in, nowadays the MBA, certainly the Harvard MBA, is really a pipeline to understanding business models, profit models, economic models, to then develop them themselves as new ventures. And Will Dean is an example of that. So we look at that case. Then with a debrief, and then the afternoon of the last day, these are your presentations. So I'm aiming to get you into groups, into 9 groups, assuming that to be optimal. We'll arrange that on the morning of the first day and assign you accordingly. And those study groups then will be the basis of your case discussion for the 3 cases, but also for your success story presentation as well at the end of the last day. And the final half hour there, I wrap up with a few other pointers on the exam. But I will be talking about the exam during the course and giving you some examples of what you can maybe consider as that for that takeaway. So for the moment, don't worry about that. I'll explain that in great detail, but realize it's very much an applied piece of material that you'll be working on there.